Pablo Salazar, a millionaire ICU doctor, hires Maria Callahan, a very poor patient, to pretend to be his fiancée at a medical conference party. But when she spoke, what happens when a life of luxury intertwines with one of pure survival? You won't believe where this story will lead. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Pablo Salazar stood in front of the large glass windows of his office, staring out at the bustling Santiago skyline. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden hue over the city. Yet, despite the beauty of the view, his heart felt heavy. As a respected ICU doctor, he had devoted his life to saving others, but the weight of expectations from his peers and family pressed down on him like a leaden cloak. His success had brought him wealth and recognition, but it had also cultivated an isolation that gnawed at his soul. "Dr. Salazar, are you ready for the conference tomorrow?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Dr. Vargas, one of his colleagues, interrupting the solitude he had sought. "Of course, I am," Pablo replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask than a reflection of his true feelings. "Just going over some last-minute details." Dr. Vargas raised an eyebrow, sensing the underlying tension. "You've got to let loose a little, Pablo. You can't be the perfect doctor all the time. People need to see the human side of you." Pablo chuckled lightly, but the laugh did not reach his eyes. "Perhaps I'll consider that," he said, glancing back out the window. He felt a sense of dread about the upcoming Congress, a prestigious event that would showcase the latest advancements in medicine. It was a gathering of the elite, doctors, researchers, and industry leaders who would scrutinize every detail of his presentation. The pressure to impress was suffocating. "Don't forget, they expect you to bring someone special," Dr. Vargas added, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "A wife, maybe?" Pablo's smile faltered. "I don't think I'll be bringing anyone," he replied curtly. The thought of introducing a partner felt foreign to him. He had been so focused on his career that personal relationships had become an afterthought, a luxury he couldn't afford. As Dr. Vargas left, Pablo leaned against the cool glass of the window, lost in thought. He had sacrificed so much for his career, chased after accolades and recognition, only to find himself standing alone at the pinnacle of success. He longed for a connection, but every relationship he had ever pursued felt shallow, overshadowed by the demands of his profession. Meanwhile, across the city, Maria Callahan lay in a dimly lit hospital room, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling her nostrils. Her body ached as she shifted slightly in her bed, the harsh fluorescent lights illuminating the starkness of her surroundings. She stared at the ceiling, lost in a haze of frustration and despair. At 28, she had already battled a chronic illness for nearly a decade, and the financial strain of her medical bills loomed over her like a dark cloud. "Maria, are you feeling any better today?" A nurse entered the room, clipboard in hand, her tone bright and cheerful. Maria forced a smile, though the effort felt like lifting a weight far too heavy. "I'm okay, just tired," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She tried to muster enthusiasm, but the truth was, she felt trapped. Dreams of a better life slipped through her fingers like sand as she lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by the harsh reality of her situation. "Hang in there. The doctor will be in to check on you shortly," the nurse said, offering a reassuring nod before leaving. Maria turned her gaze to the window, watching as the sun set over the city. Outside, life continued, people laughing, families gathering, dreams being chased, while she remained confined to her reality. "What I wouldn't give for a normal life," Maria muttered to herself, the words feeling bitter on her tongue. She thought of her aspirations, of the career she once dreamed of traveling and experiencing life to its fullest. But every time she tried to reach for those dreams, her illness pulled her back, reminding her of her limitations. Hours passed, and just as the shadows began to deepen in her room, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Dr. Salazar, his presence commanding yet somehow comforting. He stepped inside, his white coat stark against the muted colors of the room. "Good evening, Maria," he said, his voice steady and warm. "How are you feeling today?" "Better, I guess," she replied, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly. "Just trying to keep my spirits up." Pablo nodded, his eyes scanning the room before settling on her. "That's important. I know it's tough, but it's vital to stay positive." Maria appreciated his kindness, even if it felt distant at times. She had watched him interact with other patients, his genuine concern for their well-being evident in every word. "You really care about your patients," she remarked, leaning back against her pillow. "It shows." "It's my job," he said, but there was a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. "But it's also my passion. Each life matters, and I want to make a difference." As they spoke, an idea began to form in Pablo's mind. He had been mulling over the upcoming Congress and the pressure to present a perfect image. The thought of attending without a partner felt daunting, and yet, the idea of hiring someone to play the role of his fiancée was both intriguing and absurd. "Maria," he said suddenly, his voice gaining a serious tone, "I know this might sound unusual, but I need someone to accompany me to a medical congress. It's a prestigious event, and I could really use a fiancé for the occasion." Maria blinked, taken aback by his unexpected proposal. "You want me to pretend to be your fiancé?" she asked incredulously. The notion was absurd, yet it ignited a flicker of excitement within her. "Yes," Pablo replied, his expression earnest. "It would help my image, yes, but it could also provide you with some financial support during a difficult time. I can pay you for your time, and you'd have the opportunity to step out of this hospital, even if just for a few days." Maria's heart raced at the thought. On one hand, it felt like a ridiculous charade, yet on the other, it was an escape from her current reality, an opportunity to experience life beyond these hospital walls. But what would people say? What if they find out? Pablo waved a hand dismissively. "It's a temporary arrangement, just for appearances. No one needs to know the truth. It's just a role to play. You would be doing me a favor, and I'd be helping you too." "We'd be lying," Maria said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Sometimes, we have to bend the truth to survive," he replied, his gaze steady. "Think of it as a partnership. You get the support you need, and I get the image I need to maintain." Maria considered his proposition, the weight of her financial struggles pressing down on her. "I don't know. Just think about it," Pablo urged, his tone softening. "You would have an opportunity to escape for a little while, to be someone else, even if just for a few days. You deserve that." As he spoke, Maria felt a strange sense of hope stir within her. Perhaps this was the lifeline she needed, a way to break free from the confines of her illness and financial worries, even if it meant stepping into a role that felt foreign. "Okay," she finally said, surprising herself. "I'll do it." Pablo's face lit up with a genuine smile, and for the first time in a long while, Maria felt a glimmer of excitement for the future. As they discussed the details, the lines between their vastly different lives began to blur, setting the stage for a journey neither of them could have anticipated. Maria Callahan sat on the edge of her hospital bed, the sterile scent of antiseptic mingling with the faint smell of flowers from a nearby arrangement. The bright, fluorescent lights overhead felt harsh, accentuating the shadows beneath her eyes. She looked down at her hands, wringing her fingers as she replayed the conversation with Pablo Salazar in her mind. The proposition he had laid before her, posing as his fiancée at a prestigious medical congress, had been unexpected, to say the least. "Maria, I need your help," he had said, his voice steady yet laced with an urgency that piqued her curiosity. "This is a chance for both of us. You could use the money, and I need someone who can help me keep up appearances." The thought of stepping into a world so far removed from her own was both thrilling and terrifying. She felt a flutter of excitement at the idea of escaping her reality, even if only for a weekend. But the doubts crept in, like shadows at dusk. "What if I'm not what they expect?" she had replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're perfect," he had insisted, a hint of sincerity shining through his otherwise composed demeanor. "You're genuine, and that's what I need. We'll just play our parts. It's not forever." After much internal conflict, Maria found herself nodding, albeit reluctantly. "Okay, I'll do it," she had finally said, her heart racing at the thought of the charade. "But I want to make sure that this isn't just about me being your cover." Pablo's expression softened, a flicker of appreciation passing across his face. I promise, you'll be compensated well. And who knows? It might be fun. As preparations for the Congress began, the atmosphere between them shifted. They spent hours discussing details, from the clothes she would wear to the stories they would tell. Pablo brought her several outfits from his own wardrobe, carefully selecting pieces that he felt would complement her. As he held up a sleek navy dress against her frame, he couldn't help but smile, envisioning how stunning she would look in it. Here, try this one on, he urged, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Maria hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. What if it doesn't fit? I don't even know if I'll look good in it. Trust me, he replied, a playful grin tugging at his lips. You'll look incredible. You already do. As she slipped into the dress, Maria caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The fabric hugged her curves in all the right places, and for a brief moment, she felt a surge of confidence. She spun around to face Pablo, who stood there with an approving nod. See? I told you, he said, a lightness in his voice that made her laugh. You're going to steal the show, or at least distract them from the fact that I'm not a doctor, she quipped, her laughter echoing in the small room. Pablo chuckled, the sound rich and warm. They won't care about the details. Just keep smiling and act like you belong. But beneath the surface of their playful banter, tension simmered. Maria couldn't shake the feeling that their worlds were colliding in a way that was both exhilarating and dangerous. She was stepping into a life that wasn't hers, and the weight of that deception pressed heavily on her shoulders. As the day of the Congress approached, the excitement in the air was palpable. The hotel where the event was held was a grand establishment, its marble floors and elegant chandeliers a far cry from the stark white walls of the hospital. When they arrived, hand in hand, Maria's heart raced. She was overwhelmed by the sea of well-dressed professionals mingling in the lobby, their voices a low hum of laughter and conversation. Just remember, Pablo whispered as they walked through the doors, we're a couple. Act natural. Maria nodded, trying to steady her breathing. She could feel the weight of their charade pressing down on her, but as Pablo guided her into the crowd, a part of her couldn't help but feel alive. Pablo, is that really you? A voice called out from across the room, cutting through the noise. Maria looked up to see a well-dressed woman striding toward them, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Isidora, Pablo greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'd like you to meet Maria, my fiancée. Isidora's gaze flickered to Maria, a calculating look in her eyes. Fiancé? That's a surprise. You've certainly chosen an interesting partner, haven't you? Her tone dripped with skepticism, and Maria felt her heart drop. Isidora, we're very happy together, Pablo replied, his voice firm. Aren't we, Maria? Maria forced a smile, feeling the weight of Isidora's scrutiny. Yes, very happy, she said, hoping her voice didn't tremble. As the night wore on, Maria found herself swept into conversations with Pablo's colleagues, their compliments and questions swirling around her like a dizzying whirlwind. She laughed at their jokes, shared tidbits about her life that she hoped sounded convincing, and tried to ignore the nagging feeling that she was merely an imposter in a world that didn't belong to her. Yet, amid the superficiality, there were moments of genuine connection. Pablo's colleagues were kind and engaging, and she felt herself warming to them. Even Isidora, though she remained a thorn in her side, had moments of surprising warmth. You really do bring out a different side of Pablo, she remarked at one point, her tone softer, almost approving. I think he's just been waiting for the right person, Maria replied, her heart racing as she spoke. She glanced at Pablo, who was deep in conversation with a group of doctors, his face animated and alive. For a fleeting moment, she felt a pang of longing, wishing that this could be real. As the evening progressed, Maria and Pablo found themselves momentarily alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The warm breeze tousled her hair, and the lights of Santiago twinkled like stars in the distance. It was a magical moment, and Maria felt a surge of emotion. Did you ever think you'd be here? Pablo asked, gazing out at the view. Not in a million years, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I mean, look at this place. It's beautiful. He turned to her, his expression serious. You deserve this, Maria, more than anyone I know. She felt a warmth spread through her at his words. Thank you, Pablo. I just wish it didn't feel so temporary. It doesn't have to be, he said, stepping closer. We can make this work, even after the Congress is over. Maria looked up at him, her heart racing. The connection between them was undeniable, and she could feel the tension building. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I just mean, perhaps there's more to this than just a facade, he replied, his gaze intense. Before she could respond, laughter erupted from the party inside, breaking the moment. They both turned to look, and as the sounds of celebration washed over them, Maria felt the weight of reality crash back in. This was just a game, a temporary escape. But as she looked back at Pablo, she couldn't help but wonder if their connection was more than just pretense. Let's go back in, she suggested, pulling away slightly. We don't want to be the only ones out here. Pablo didn't move for a moment, his eyes searching hers as if trying to decipher her thoughts. Then, with a soft smile, he took her hand and led her back inside. But the unspoken tension lingered in the air, filling the space between them with possibilities neither of them dared to voice. As the morning sun poured through the hotel window, Maria Callahan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart raced as she replayed the events of the previous evening. The laughter, the glances, the fleeting moments of connection with Pablo Salazar felt like a dream she'd never dared to hope for. Yet, now, the weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air. She slipped out of bed, the soft carpet cushioning her feet as she made her way to the bathroom. As she splashed cold water on her face, she tried to shake off the remnants of sleep and confusion. The memory of overhearing Pablo's conversation with Isidora gnawed at her. It had been a conversation she never intended to overhear, a chance moment that had shattered the fragile illusion they had created together. Maria, you have to understand, Pablo had said, his voice low and slightly strained. I needed someone to fill the role, someone who could impress the attendees. They wouldn't take me seriously otherwise. You're perfect for the image. Isidora's laughter had cut through the air like a knife. You know they're going to find out eventually. What if she develops feelings for you? It could complicate things. Maria had felt her heart plummet. In that moment, she realized she was nothing more than a convenient lie, a prop in Pablo's carefully crafted facade. The tears had come unbidden, and she had slipped away before they could betray her presence. Dressing quickly, she resolved to put on a brave face. After all, she was still at the Congress, and her role as Pablo's fiancée required her to maintain composure, even if her heart was in turmoil. As she stepped into the hallway, the bustling atmosphere of the Congress greeted her. Attendees moved in clusters, their conversations punctuated by laughter and the clinking of glasses. She spotted Pablo across the room, deep in conversation with a group of doctors. His dark hair fell effortlessly over his forehead, and his smile was as inviting as ever. Maria, he called, his eyes lighting up as he spotted her. There you are. I was just talking about you. She forced a smile, feeling the weight of his gaze. Oh, really? All good things, I hope? Of course. Everyone is so impressed with you, he replied, stepping closer. You've added a different dynamic to the event. But what about you? Maria asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. How's the Congress treating you? Better now that you're here, he said, reaching for her hand. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her, igniting the spark of connection they had shared the night before. But she quickly extinguished that flicker of hope, reminding herself of the truth she had overheard. Let's go grab a coffee, she suggested, attempting to steer their conversation away from the uncomfortable reality that loomed over them. Pablo nodded, his expression brightening. Great idea. I could use a break. As they walked side by side, Maria felt the tension between them. Pablo's laughter seemed genuine, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in her own life. She studied him, trying to reconcile the man standing beside her with the one who had so casually discussed her role as a mere facade. Did you sleep well? He asked, glancing over at her. Not really, she admitted, forcing herself to meet his gaze. I guess it's hard to sleep when you're worried about appearances, he faltered, his smile fading slightly. What do you mean? Oh, Maria said, trying to maintain a light tone, making sure we're playing the part, right? It's exhausting sometimes. Pablo opened his mouth to respond but hesitated, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I didn't mean for it to feel like that, he finally said, his voice softer. I thought we were having fun. Fun, Maria echoed, her heart pounding. Is that what this is to you? Just fun? Maria? No, it's not that simple. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully, the intensity of his gaze making her breath hitch. I admire you. I didn't expect to feel this way. Feel what way? She challenged, crossing her arms defensively. You mean to say you didn't expect to develop feelings for the person you hired to pretend to be your fiancé? Pablo ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. I didn't plan for this. I thought I was doing you a favor, and maybe I thought it would just be easier for me. Easier? Maria's voice rose slightly, drawing the attention of a few nearby attendees. You think it's easy for me? To pretend to be someone I'm not while you parade me around like a trophy? I'm not a decoration, Pablo. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I never meant to treat you that way. You're not just a trophy to me. You're special. Maria felt her resolve wavering as his words wrapped around her heart like a lifeline. Special? How can this be special when it's all based on a lie? Before he could respond, Isidora strode into view, her presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. There you are, Pablo. I've been looking for you, she declared, her tone overly cheerful. And who's this lovely lady? Maria's stomach churned as she forced a smile. Just your run-of-the-mill fiancé, she replied, sarcasm lacing her words. Isidora's eyes sparkled with mischief as she turned to Pablo. Oh, don't be modest, Maria. You're the talk of the Congress. Everyone is dying to know how you snagged such a catch. Pablo's expression shifted, irritation flickering across his face. Isidora, can we talk privately for a moment? He asked, his voice clipped. Surely you can spare a moment for your fiancée, Isidora teased, leaning closer to Pablo. You wouldn't want to make her feel neglected, would you? Maria felt her heart sink further. Isidora's presence was a constant reminder of the precarious situation she found herself in. She was caught between wanting to believe in the connection she felt with Pablo and the harsh reality of his intentions. I'll be right back, Pablo said, his eyes lingering on Maria for a moment longer than necessary before he turned to Isidora, who was already pulling him away. Maria watched them, her heart heavy. The laughter and chatter of the Congress attendees faded into a dull roar as she wrestled with her thoughts. She had entered this Congress hoping for an escape, a brief respite from her life. But now, she was left questioning everything. As she stood by the coffee station, waiting for them to return, she felt a wave of doubt wash over her. Was it worth it to continue playing the role of Pablo's fiancé when the foundation of their connection was built on deception? Even as she grappled with her feelings, her heart ached at the thought of letting go of the warmth he had brought into her life, however fleeting it had been. When Pablo rejoined her, his expression was thoughtful, and the energy between them was charged with unspoken words. I'm sorry about Isidora, he said, his voice low. She doesn't understand. Doesn't understand what? Maria replied, a hint of bitterness creeping into her tone. That I'm just a placeholder in your life? Maria, please, he said, reaching out to touch her arm. I never wanted you to feel that way. You mean more to me than you realize. Do I? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Or am I just a means to an end? Pablo's gaze intensified, and for a moment, Maria thought she saw genuine hurt in his eyes. You really think that? You're not just a means to anything. He paused, searching for the right words. I care about you. I never expected to feel this way. Maria's heart raced, her breath hitching. But how can I trust that? You hired me. This was supposed to be a business arrangement. Maybe it started that way, he admitted, his voice filled with urgency. But it's changed. I can't even explain it, but it has. I want to know you, Maria. Really know you. The The sincerity in his voice tugged at her heartstrings, but the shadows of doubt loomed large. And what happens when the Congress is over? When the charade ends? Pablo stepped closer, his eyes piercing into hers. I don't want it to end. I want you in my life, not just for this weekend, but beyond that. Her heart fluttered, but she couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The truth hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to burst. How could she open her heart to him when the very foundation of their relationship was built on a lie? Pablo, she began, her voice trembling, but he interrupted her. Let me show you, he insisted, taking her hand in his, warmth radiating through their connection. Let's forget about everything else for today. Just you and me. No games. Just truth. Maria hesitated, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to believe in something beautiful, even if it was born from deception? With a deep breath, she nodded, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. Okay, just today. As they walked away from the coffee station, the gala dinner hall was grand and opulent, with crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the elegantly dressed guests. Maria Callahan stood by the window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the city below, her heart heavy with a mix of emotions. The laughter and chatter of the attendees faded into the background, overshadowed by the turmoil swirling within her. She had played the role of Pablo Salazar's fiancée well, but the lines between pretense and reality were beginning to blur, and doubt gnawed at her insides. Maria, Pablo called, his voice cutting through the noise. He approached her, his expression a blend of concern and determination. We need to talk. Maria turned to face him, her arms crossed defensively. What's there to talk about, Pablo? The charade? The lies? Her voice trembled with suppressed anger. Pablo stepped closer, lowering his voice to a more intimate tone. I never meant for you to feel this way. I thought we were having fun, that we were connecting. Connecting? Maria scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You mean connecting as a means to an end? You needed a beautiful fiancée to impress your colleagues, and I was just the perfect candidate. A charity case who could play along. Maria, that's not true, he protested, his brow furrowing with frustration. I hired you because I saw something in you. I thought you could help me as much as I could help you. Help? She echoed the word, disbelief etched across her features. You think this is help? Using me as a prop in your life while I struggle with my own? Pablo's expression shifted, revealing the pain in his eyes. I didn't intend for it to become this complicated. I didn't expect to feel anything at all for you. Maria's heart raced at his admission, but she quickly steeled herself against the unexpected warmth spreading within her. And what do you feel now, Pablo? Do you even know? Or is it just guilt that's driving you to say these things? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of desperation. I can't deny that I care about you, but I was scared of how different our worlds are. I thought if I kept it light, it would be easier for both of us. Easier? Her voice rose, echoing in the lavish hall. You think pretending is easier? You think I want to be a game to you? The tension in the air crackled, and guests nearby began to glance their way, intrigued by the escalating confrontation. Maria felt the heat of embarrassment flooding her cheeks, but she stood her ground. Maria, please, Pablo pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper as he stepped closer, his vulnerability laid bare. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could keep my feelings in check, but it's impossible. You've changed everything for me. Changed everything? She shot back, bitterness lacing her words. You mean you've changed your perception of me, or perhaps your own need to feel validated? The moment you hired me, you reduced me to a concept, a project. Stop. Just stop, he exclaimed, frustration boiling over. You're not just a project to me. You're real, Maria. You deserve more than this. But I didn't know how to navigate my feelings for you without complicating everything. Maria turned away from him, her heart pounding as she fought back tears. The truth was, she had started to care for him, too, but the hurtful reality of their arrangement loomed large. I can't do this anymore, Pablo. I can't be the person you want me to be just because it's convenient for you. Maria, Don't say that, he urged, desperation creeping into his voice. We can figure this out together. I want to be honest with you. Honest? She repeated, incredulous. You want honesty after everything? You've built this entire facade around us. What's honest about that? Pablo's shoulders slumped, the weight of her words visibly crushing him. Before he could finish, Maria turned on her heel, her heart racing. I need air, she muttered, striding away from him, her emotions threatening to spill over. She felt his eyes on her, but she wouldn't let him see her break. As she stepped outside the gala, the cool night air wrapped around her like a balm, but it did little to soothe her inner turmoil. She leaned against the railing, taking deep breaths as she fought against the storm of feelings raging within her. The city lights sparkled in the darkness, but they brought her no comfort. Instead, they reminded her of the stark contrast between her life and the life Pablo led. She felt a presence behind her and turned to find Isidora, Pablo's old friend and colleague, approaching with a smug smile. Well, if it isn't the star of the evening. You seem to have quite the heated discussion with Pablo. Is everything all right? Maria narrowed her eyes, sensing the underlying malice in Isidora's tone. What do you want, Isidora? Just checking in on my dear friend, Isidora replied, feigning innocence. He looked rather distressed when you stormed off. I hope you didn't say anything too hurtful, Maria scoffed, feeling her anger bubble at the surface again. You don't care about him. You're just here to stir the pot, aren't you? Oh, sweet Maria, Isidora said, her voice dripping with condescension. You really think you're the only one who has a stake in this? Pablo is my friend, and I've known him longer than you. I can't help but be concerned for him, especially when he seems so distracted. Distracted? Maria echoed, her heart racing. Is that what you call it? Using him to get ahead, Isidora? Because that's all you care about. Isidora stepped closer, her expression shifting to one of menace. You shouldn't be so naive. You don't belong in his world, and you certainly don't understand the pressures he faces. You're just a temporary distraction for him. Enough. Maria snapped, her voice firm. I won't let you manipulate me or him. I'm not just a passing phase for Pablo. If only you could see him for who he truly is. Isidora laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that echoed in the night air. Oh, darling, I see him all too well. You're the one who's blind. He may have feelings for you now, but when it comes down to it, he'll choose his future over you. Just wait and see. With that, Isidora turned on her heels, leaving Maria seething in the cold night air. The chill seeped into her bones, but the real frost came from the words of doubt that Isidora had planted in her mind. As the gala continued behind her, Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the tension that hung thick in the air. She pulled it out and saw her sister's name flashing on the screen. With a hesitant breath, she answered, Maria. Her sister's voice trembled on the other end. I don't know how to tell you this, but Mom's health has taken a turn for the worse. We need you back home. The world around her faded, the laughter and music from the gala slipping away into silence. Maria's heart sank, her mind racing with the implications of her sister's words. What do you mean? What happened? She was admitted to the hospital again. The doctors say it's serious, Maria. They think she might not have much time left, her sister said, the pain in her voice palpable. No longer able to hold back the tears, Maria nodded, even though her sister couldn't see her. I'm coming home. I'll be there as soon as I can. As she ended the call, the weight of her reality crashed down on her. Her mother's health was in jeopardy, and all the concerns about Pablo and their complicated relationship faded in light of the urgency of family. Maria's heart twisted, torn between the life she had briefly tasted in the luxurious halls of the Congress and the harsh realities awaiting her at home. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. This was not just about her and Pablo anymore. It was about her family, her mother, and the responsibilities that had always loomed over her. And just like that, the charade began to lose its sheen, revealing the cracks that had been forming beneath the surface. With determination, Maria wiped her tears and turned back toward the gala. She would find Pablo and make a decision about their future, but first, She needed to confront the life she had left behind, the struggles that awaited her, and ultimately, the love she was beginning to discover. Maria stood at the entrance of the hospital, her heart heavy with uncertainty. The sterile scent of antiseptics and the low hum of medical equipment surrounded her, reminding her of her mother's frail condition. She clutched her small bag tightly, feeling the fabric of her life unravel with each passing moment. The Congress had brought her a taste of something brighter, something she had never dared to hope for, yet the reality of her family's needs weighed heavily on her. As she turned to leave, a familiar voice called out behind her, urgent and filled with emotion. "Maria, wait." Pablo's voice pierced through the clamor of the hospital, and she felt her pulse quicken. She hesitated, torn between the desire to escape and the magnetic pull of the man who had turned her life upside down. Pablo rushed toward her, his expression a mixture of desperation and determination. "Please, don't go," he pleaded, a hint of vulnerability in his deep brown eyes. "I need to talk to you." Maria crossed her arms, her defenses rising. "What's there to talk about, Pablo? You wanted me to play a role, and now I see that's all I ever was to you. A prop for your image. That's not true," he argued, stepping closer, the warmth of his presence almost overwhelming her. "I didn't plan for this for you. I didn't expect to care for you the way I do." "Care?" she scoffed, her voice trembling. "You don't even know me. You only know the version of me you created for your Congress." Pablo took a deep breath, visibly struggling to find the right words. "I know you've had to fight for everything. I know you're not just some facade. I see your strength, your passion. I've seen the way you care for your patients, how you fight for them, just like you're fighting for your mother now." Her heart softened, but she was unwilling to let him see her falter. "You don't get to play the hero now, Pablo. Your initial intentions were selfish." He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper, as if he were sharing a secret meant only for her ears. "I didn't realize I was being selfish until it was too late. I thought I was helping you. But the truth is, you've helped me more than you'll ever know. You've reminded me of what it means to be human." Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes, and she quickly blinked them away. "I can't stay here. My mother needs me. I can't put her health at risk for some charade." "I understand," he replied, frustration flickering across his features. "But can't you see? I've fallen for you, Maria. This isn't just about the Congress anymore. It's about us." The weight of his confession hung in the air between them, and Maria felt her resolve beginning to crumble. "You say that now, but what will happen when the Congress is over? When the cameras are gone and the applause fades? Then I'll be left with my feelings for you," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I want to be with you. Not just in front of people, but for real." Before she could respond, a sharp voice interrupted their moment. "Pablo, there you are." Isidora strode into view, her presence commanding and unwelcome. "I've been looking for you everywhere." Maria's heart sank. Isidora's arrival felt like a storm cloud darkening the fragile light that had begun to flicker between her and Pablo. She stepped back, feeling the distance between her and Pablo growing again, and instinctively wrapped her arms around herself. "Isidora," Pablo said, annoyance threading through his tone. "Can't you see we're in the middle of something?" "Clearly," Isidora replied, her gaze flickering between them. "But it's important. You need to hear this." She turned to Maria, her expression shifting to something more sinister. "You should hear this too. It's about Pablo's past. The real reason he brought you into this." "What do you mean?" Maria asked, her heart racing, a sense of foreboding creeping in. Isidora's lips curled into a smile that sent a chill down Maria's spine. "Did you know that Pablo has always had one eye on his family fortune? That he's been groomed to take over since he was a boy? He's not just a doctor. He's a Salazar, and the family name carries weight." "Stop it, Isidora," Pablo said, his voice low and menacing. "You're crossing a line." But Isidora pressed on, ignoring him. "You may think you're special, Maria, but you're just another stepping stone for him." He needed a sweet, innocent face to gain sympathy from his colleagues and to further his own ambitions. "Isidora, that's enough." Pablo's voice rose, desperation evident. You don't know what you're talking about. Maria felt her heart shatter into a million pieces. Is this true, Pablo? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Pablo's face paled, and he reached out for her, but Maria stepped back, shaking her head. I can't believe this. You used me. You used my situation to advance your own interests. No, Maria, that was never my intention, he shouted, but the damage was done. Maria could see the way Isidora's words had woven a web of doubt around her heart, trapping her in fear and betrayal. Isidora's right about one thing, Maria said, her voice trembling with emotion. I am just a project to you. You wanted to make yourself look good, to gain something from this. I was just a means to an end. That's not true, Pablo cried, his eyes pleading. I care for you in ways I never expected. I didn't want any of this to happen. I just wanted to help you, and then I fell for you. Help me? Maria echoed, the bitterness coating her words. You thought I was just a poor girl who needed saving. You didn't see me for me. You saw an opportunity. Maria, please, he begged, stepping forward once again, but she held up a hand to stop him. Save it, Pablo. I can't do this anymore. I need to go. She turned, her heart racing as she walked away, each step feeling like a betrayal to the feelings she had begun to nurture for him. Maria, Pablo's voice followed her, a mixture of anguish and desperation. You can't just leave like this. But she didn't look back. The weight of Isidora's words hung heavily in the air, suffocating the hope that had begun to blossom between them. As she stepped outside, the cool evening air did little to quell the storm brewing inside her. She felt lost and betrayed, her heart aching with the realization that what she had thought was the beginning of something beautiful had turned into a nightmare of confusion and doubt. Pablo stood at the hospital entrance, watching her go, his heart shattered into pieces as he realized the gravity of what had just transpired. The woman who had come to mean so much to him was slipping away, and he felt powerless to stop it. Pablo Salazar sat in his luxury car, gripping the steering wheel with a mix of determination and anxiety. The vibrant streets of Santiago blurred past him as he drove toward the cafe where he had arranged to meet Maria. After the tumultuous events of the previous days, he felt the weight of his mistakes pressing heavily on his chest. He had let Isidora's jealousy and spite drive a wedge between him and Maria, the one person who had brought light into his otherwise isolated life. As he parked, he took a moment to gather his thoughts. The cafe was a quaint little place, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. It was where he had first noticed Maria's resilience, a stark contrast to the polished world he inhabited. He stepped out of the car, straightened his suit, and walked inside, scanning the room for her familiar figure. Maria was seated at a corner table, her fingers absently tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Her expression was distant, lost in thoughts of her own. As Pablo approached, he noticed the shadows under her eyes, a clear indication of the turmoil she had been through. Taking a deep breath, he pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. Maria, he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. I need to talk to you. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face before quickly giving way to a guarded expression. What is there to talk about, Pablo? You've made your intentions pretty clear. Please, just hear me out, he pleaded, desperation creeping into his tone. I know I've messed up. I've let Isidora manipulate things between us, and I should have been stronger. But I want to make this right. Her gaze softened slightly, but the hurt was still evident. You used me, Pablo. You brought me into your life under false pretenses. I was just a facade for your perfect image. Not anymore, he asserted, leaning forward. I care about you, more than I ever intended. I never thought I would feel this way. The moment we started talking, I saw a side of life I had forgotten. You made me feel alive. Maria's expression flickered with uncertainty. And what about Isidora? She made it clear that you wanted me to help you gain connections and sympathy. Was that true? No. I thought I could control the narrative, make people see me differently, but I never wanted to hurt you. Isidora has her own agenda. She's always been jealous of anyone who gets close to me. He took a breath, feeling the weight of his confession. She knows something about your health that I didn't find out in time. For a moment, silence enveloped them. Maria's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Isidora, she's been hiding critical information about your health. I didn't know until now, but she has access to your medical records. There's a treatment available that could help your mother, but she was keeping it from me to hurt both of us. Maria's heart raced as she processed his words. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Her voice trembled, a mix of anger and disbelief. I didn't know. I thought I could handle it on my own, he admitted, regret etched on his face. But now, I need your help to confront her. We can expose her lies together. Maria studied Pablo's earnest expression, her heart torn between anger and the flicker of hope ignited by his words. And why should I trust you again? Because I'm willing to lay everything bare. I'll tell you everything about my past, my mistakes. I want you to know who I am. Not just the doctor, but the man who is terrified of losing you. A moment passed, heavy with the weight of unspoken words and unresolved feelings. You really mean that? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I do, he replied. His eyes locked onto hers, a silent plea for forgiveness and understanding. After a long silence, Maria finally nodded, her defenses slowly crumbling. All right, let's confront Isidora. With a renewed sense of purpose, they left the cafe together, an unspoken bond forming between them as they faced the challenges ahead. Pablo led the way to Isidora's office, each step filled with a mix of anticipation and dread. He had to confront the woman who had brought so much pain into their lives. When they arrived, Isidora was seated at her desk, her expression shifting from surprise to a smirk as she recognized them. Well, what do we have here? She taunted, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority. The perfect couple back together again? How quaint. Pablo stepped forward, his voice steady. Isidora, we need to talk. Oh, about what? Your little charade? Or perhaps your newfound love for the girl you once deemed a mere prop? She laughed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Enough, Maria said, her voice firm, surprising even herself. We know you've been hiding information about my health. You've manipulated both of us for your own gain. Isidora's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. And what are you going to do about it? You think anyone will believe you over me? I have the connections, Pablo. You're just a doctor with a pretty fiancée who doesn't belong in your world. Pablo took a deep breath, steadying his resolve. No, Isidora. This ends now. I will expose everything. Your manipulations, your lies. You've gone too far. You think you can ruin me? She hissed, her eyes narrowing dangerously. I will make you regret this. Maria stepped closer to Pablo, her hand finding his. You're the one who will regret this, Isidora. The truth has a way of coming out, and it always does. Pablo nodded, feeling the strength of Maria's support. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you. You've tried to tear us apart, but you've only made us stronger. In the ensuing silence, the tension hung thick in the air. Isidora's expression darkened, revealing a flicker of fear beneath her facade of confidence. You think you can take me down? You have no idea who you're dealing with. We'll see about that, Pablo replied, his voice unwavering. You've underestimated us. After their confrontation, Maria and Pablo walked out of the office hand in hand, a sense of relief washing over them. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. Days later, Maria's mother received the treatment she so desperately needed, thanks to Pablo's relentless efforts. As they sat together in the hospital room, surrounded by the scent of antiseptic and the soft beeping of machines, Maria felt a warmth radiating from within her. Pablo's presence gave her hope, and for the first time in a long while, she could see a future beyond her struggles. Thank you, Maria whispered, her heart full. For everything. Pablo smiled, the weight of his past lifting as he took her hand in his. No, thank you for trusting me again. You've shown me what love truly means. They shared a moment of silence, their gazes locked, understanding passing between them. In that instant, they realized that love could indeed triumph over adversity and deception. Together, they were ready to face the world, not as doctor and patient, but as partners united by their struggles and newfound understanding.